Trigger sensitivity. So what is actually trigger sensitivity? You can have, of course, two types of triggers, pressure trigger and flow trigger. But for each of these, you will have to go over a particular threshold for the ventilator to actually see the effort that a patient is making. And so these thresholds are, something that you would want to keep in a particular range according to the settings on the ventilator. So when you really think about it, what does it actually take, or what impacts the ability to trigger? These will be mainly two things. First of all, the size of the effort. That would be the peak, say, of the patient's effort. But it's not just that. It is, of course, also the way the patient makes the effort. That means if you have a slow, gradual inspiration, it will be harder for the ventilator to see it because maybe the flow will not actually reach the threshold or not. So what we are going to do here today is we are doing an experiment where we actually check the peak sensitivity, or the effort the patient makes as a peak pressure, and we will keep our patient's effort in the same shape, so it will not be changing the gradual or the attack, if you will, of the patient. So what do you need for an experiment like this? You basically just need the ASL5000 with the software running on a laptop or other PC, the ventilator circuit appropriate for the ventilators that you are using, and then we will use for this particular kind of experiment a script, which means it is going to be repeatable, so you can do the same experiment with different settings on the ventilator, and you will have exactly the same behavior of your patient. So when you look at this particular script, you can see here what we call the normal 15 BPM. That means we are setting up the ventilator to trigger perfectly, so to speak. Then we are going into what we call the trigger challenge, and that particular piece is actually set up through something that we call our time-varying parameters. And the time-varying parameters allow us to actually make changes to one particular or several particular aspects of this effort while we are actually executing one step of our script. So as you can see here, we actually decrease the peak of the effort from 3, that would be the starting point, and then we go down to a very, very small effort, which we would expect the ventilator not to notice anymore as a patient effort, which is only 1/2 centimeter of water. We'll keep it there for a few breaths, and then we'll increase again to see when the ventilator again recognizes those patient efforts. And so this kind of a experiment then in a script can be repeated multiple times if you need to have, aspects of reliability and so on involved in your testing. But this is basically the way we conceptualize this. Now, when we do this with the ventilator, we are using a volume control with a flow trigger of 2, and the mode is actually assist control. That means we expect every single breath of the patient to be triggered by the ventilator. Or recognized by the ventilator. So when we run this now with this particular setting of 2 liters per minute sensitivity, we will be getting our view that is here on our software, very similar to what you might see on your specific ventilator. We have flows, then we show pressures, and we show the volume. Now, in the pressure view, you will see this white line there, which is actually our effort of the patient, the muscle pressure, if you will. We show it as a negative, and that means this is something that you will not be able to see, of course, on a ventilator, but it is very helpful right here to see whether actually a breath was synchronized, was recognized by the vent or not. So with this home view, we can now go and run the simulation. And you can see we have right now the 5 centimeters of water effort. And now we are starting this. So we have, 1 breath, 2 breaths, diminishing 3 breaths. They are still triggered, as you can see. And 4 and 5. Yes, it is still being triggered. 6, 7. You can see there's a little bit more of a delay now. And at 8, we are actually missing the breaths. Interestingly, you can now see some kind of synchrony, but we had a breath rate of 8 set as a backup on the ventilator, and therefore we are not going to have the ventilator responding. It's actually just coinciding. And here you can see the ventilator actually triggers, so to speak, before the patient makes an effort. So that's definitely not triggered. Here we go again. We have, after a couple of breaths, the response of the ventilator. Now we are back in business and the ventilator is responding. So in this case, we had, you can just go now, and we had these settings with the now we are actually going with 4 liters per minute of trigger sensitivity. Everything else stays the same on the ventilator settings. The script is exactly the same. And now we can just see how that responds. So if we are going to start, oh yeah, here we are with the first and the second and the third, it's still triggered. The fourth, yes, still. The fifth, and here the sixth. Oh, that is not triggered anymore. So here we already have a ventilator that does not recognize the patient's effort at the 6th breath. And we will also see that we have now more breaths that are not being recognized. I think we are going to have a few more right here. You can see how the ventilator just delivers its 8 breaths per minute, but there is no trigger yet. And again, still not. You can see how much longer it will take now. Oh, here we go. Finally, the ventilator can recognize it. And you can see that the effort that was needed is a little bit bigger than in our first experiment. Mm-hmm. So in summary, when we had the 2 liters per minute setting, we had the missed triggers start on the 9th breath, and there were like 6 breaths in a row that were not triggered. And then in the setting with 4 liters per minute, we had the missed triggers already start on the 6th breath, and it was a total of 10 breaths that actually were not triggered. So you can see how the different setting of the flow trigger makes a difference. And of course, in a clinical situation, not only does the patient's effort matter, but then you have situations of auto-PEEP, etc., that make it harder for a ventilator to actually recognize the patient effort. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye-bye.